Hi, I'm Sam, and this is week 2 of the horror show. And of course, obviously, I'll be doing Insidious 3. Um, so this is where... So there's like 5 Insidious movies, right? The first 2 are directed by James Wan. The third one's directed by Leigh Whannel. And then the fourth one's directed by someone else. The third and fourth one are kind of their own thing, but they still follow, Elise Rainier, played by Lin Shaye. And this is where it kind of starts, I guess, spoiler dropping a little bit, at least for me anyway. I'll get into the movie. Lin Shaye's in it, of course. Angus Sampson plays Tucker. Leigh Whannel plays Specs. They both come back to play their respective roles. Stephanie Scott plays Quinn Brenner, who's the main girl. Dermot Mulroney plays Sean Brenner, which is her dad, the main girl's dad. And a few other characters, but those were the main ones I thought. Leigh Whannel, the director, he actually directed Upgrade and Invisible Man, the new one, of course. So watching this, it's like, I can tell that this is like, this is one, if not his first movie he's made. I think it was his first. And it's not terrible, but, as I'll talk about, it's not the same as the first 2. Before the events of Insidious, this movie takes place 3 years prior, Elise Rainier and paranormal investigators Tucker and Specs team up for the first time to help a teenage girl who, in the process of attempting to contact her mom, attracted monstrous entities that crave for the living. The only way to help her is to travel into the further and unravel the mysteries that await. So those are like, so Lin Shaye and Tucker, Lin Shaye, Elise and Tucker and Specs. It's kind of like you're watching 2 movies, but not really, because it's like an hour and a half movie. So not really, but in the same time, there's them, and then there's Stephanie Scott's character, Quinn. Quinn's kind of like the 2 stories going on until they start kind of like mixing together. Except I guess Elise's story isn't really that much. You're mostly following Quinn's character. She starts seeing this thing, and then she gets in an accident. Some car hits her while she's staring at something. Right? And now she's in a wheelchair, and she can't walk, and she's basically trapped in her bed or in her wheelchair. She's being haunted by this man with the oxygen tank. I like aspects of this movie. I think some aspects are pretty good. The story is interesting, or the very least following Quinn and how it's going with her for her is interesting. The ending's a bit of but anyway, let's get into it. IMDb had this movie out of 122,000 people. 6.1 out of 10. So here's mine. For the story, I have it 8 out of 10. I like the story, and whenever it's like the story, it's a mix of 2 things. It's 1, is it a good idea? And 2, is it good in the sense of, hey, I'm following it, it makes sense, at least with the logic of the movie. It makes sense. Or does it? And I guess to a degree, it's hard to go and be like, the Insidious universe doesn't make any sense. But when you like start thinking about it, or I guess not thinking about it, depending on where you are here, then it's not that difficult. At least in my opinion anyway. So whenever something weird happens, it can make sense. But if you don't want to think about it, then you just pretend that, just go along with it, right? Elise, so in this movie, Elise hasn't really done anything when it comes to the further. Hasn't really helped anyone because in her youth, it was really bad. And they don't really talk about it in this movie, but they do in the next movie about her youth. Or just the idea of what we already know, that being she's already been in there, and there's this woman that's trying to kill her in there. Which, you know, if you know the woman, it's the lady in black. It's the woman in the black wedding dress. It looks like the old lady. That ghost. I don't know. There probably is a specific name for it. I can't think of it right now. That you see in the first and second one. The ghost that haunted Josh from the first two movies when he was a kid. So Elise is really, like, hesitant about going into the further or just helping anyone whenever it comes to that. But it just has that feeling that she has to help this girl. And then, of course, we already talked about, the Quinn Brenner, that character. I was already talking about. She's like, you know, she's stuck in a wheelchair. Nothing she could really do about it except lose her mind. And that's all I should probably say without spoiling. I don't know. Like, when I get to the ending, I suppose I'll spoil a bit, but, you know. The music, I say, is a 6 out of 10. I think my big problem with these movies is that the music isn't really music, and whenever it is music, it's like soft, emotional music, or it's supposed to be anyway. And I think it only either gets worse or stays the same. It doesn't really get better. Now, I'm doing the third one right now. The fourth one, spoiler alert, it's either the same or worse. But I don't know how the fifth one is. I haven't got back to that one yet. By the time I do watch that movie, I'll know whether it's, you know, better or worse. Although I'd like to think it's better, because just in general, I remember really liking the fifth one when it came out. Moral is a 6 out of 10. There's a good, there's an evil. It's Insidious. It's always the same kind of thing. So I think for the next one, I'm just gonna say what the number is, and it's like, that's why. The evil being being a ghost that doesn't want to crave to live. Although, you know, that's what the summary says. The summary says, you know, that it's entities that crave for the living. It's actually just one that just wants life to come to death. And it's basically draining Quinn's soul. It has half of her soul and wants all of it, and doesn't want to take over the body, just wants the life that she has down with it. Or I guess him, because it looks like a guy. But yeah. Cheese is -1. This is where you start getting some of, like, the more cheesy kind of stuff. And hey, it's Leigh Whannel's first directorial. Wow. His first one. It's his first movie, or one of his first. And he's been in this for some time, so when you're following Tucker and Specs, they're supposed to be like the comic relief. Supposed to, you know, make things, you know, ooh, okay, everyone calm down. Tucker looks kind of funny because he has like a mohawk or whatever going on. But I think some aspects of the movie kind of feel forced, like them being in the movie. Like they're in the movie they just so happen to be there. But, like, very little progress, I think. It's like, could the movie have still happened without them in it? Probably. Or, like, something else would have to happen, but it's, like, one of the smallest details. It's like, they're fine. But sometimes they just say too much, and then it just kills the mood. It's like, okay, cool. I'm watching a prequel, so I know, like, Elise is gonna be fine. So they're like, what's the point of them being there? You know, comic relief. Them in the first and second one was great because, you know, you don't know what's going to go. But when you're watching a prequel with those two in it, then you're just kind of like, oh, cool, yay, comic relief, because Gold is going to be 7 out of 10. There's some good moments, but it definitely drops. Although there's one moment that I thought was, like, really good. And I guess I'll spoil it because we're getting near to the ending. Because, you know, progress where the storyline of the movie goes. So, Quinn gets teleported to one story up. And when the father finds her, finally, because the father hears her, like, crying as, like, the the ghost or whatever takes her up there. And when the father finds her, they like find like footsteps, and they follow the footsteps in this room, and it's not in there, but the window's broken, and so the father looks through the window first and sees it looked like someone jumped to their death, right? Dead body on the ground, right? He's like, oh my gosh, he jumped. I can't believe he jumped. And then the girl looks, and as soon as the girl looks over, the ghost is right there, ready to grab her and pull her down. I thought that was pretty good. That was pretty good. But it definitely does drop, because there's a lot of better moments in the other ones, and there's more of them in the first two. Humanity is an 8 out of 10. That being, you put yourself in Quinn's shoes. That being, you're in a wheelchair and you're being haunted. There's really nothing you can do about it. Well, there is something you could do about it, but they never go in that direction in this movie, so, you know. It's really nihilistic until the ending. Which in the ending, as I was saying in the synopsis, Quinn's trying to reach her mom, who died like a year prior or less, kind of thing. When all seems lost, she comes and saves the day, effectively. And they're able to beat the entity by Quinn coming back to being one, because she's like separated, or at least to a degree anyway, like half in the further, half in the real world. And when she's finally one in the further, she, becomes, conscious, I guess, and then just takes the not gas mask, but, the off of the ghost, and because the ghost has the oxygen tank, so it's like, it's always walking around with that mask on. And she just takes the mask off, and it just dies. It's like, okay. And then the very ending is like a silly jump scare that's like, oh, look, you're gonna see what happens in the next movie. And it's like, nothing happens. Not in the next movie anyway, not related to it. It's just, it's like, oh, so cool. It led to nothing. So it's a 7. Because it's like, it's fine, aspects of the ending are fine, but it's just that you beat it by taking the mask off, and now it's dead. It's like, I guess Batman in The Dark Knight Rises should have just taken Bane's mask off, and he would have won. But no, he just had to punch him multiple times. Just take the mask off, he'd die then. So yeah. It sounds bad, but my grade is a 5.9 out of 10. Which sounds bad, considering the first two were, like, high 6s. Like, the second one was a 6.6. The first one was a 7.1. It drops, really big. Spoiler alert, the next one's worse. So, yeah. I'm Sam. I'm a Flying Kite. And, this is week 2 of The Horror Show. I did Insidious 3. And I think it's a fine movie that, if you want to watch it, sure, but, like, I think you should watch the Insidious movies from the first to the 5th one. But if you had to skip any of them, skip the 3rd and 4th one. I'll see y'all next week. Goodbye.